anyone who's experienced wolf hunting, there's those moments when you're trying to call in wolves and they just don't close in the distance. That first time, like you said, there was stupid wolves. There was a lot of them. What's happened? The stupid ones got killed off.
Yeah.
Now I know as soon as Oregon and Washington open their season up, it's going to be the same ordeal where that first year, there's going to be a lot of people killing wolves that first couple of years. Then after that, you got only the smart wolves, and they still reproduce quickly. And the thing is, with those alpha males and alpha females, they teach the pups.
Right.
There's wildlife biologists that do studies on wolves in Alaska, and those alpha male and alpha females will teach the pups how to avoid trap lines.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like they're like you said it, they're one of the most intelligent animals in North America. I can't think of another animal even comparative to that.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Sig Sauer. SIG is a leading provider and manufacturer of firearms, electro-optics, ammunition, air guns, and suppressors. For over 250 years, Sig Sauer Inc. has evolved and thrived by blending American ingenuity, German engineering, and Swiss precision. Today, Sig Sauer is synonymous with industry-leading quality and innovation, which has made it the brand of choice amongst the U.S. military, the global defense community, law enforcement, competitive shooters, hunters, and responsible citizens. Sig Sauer is also a premier provider of elite firearms instruction and tactical training at the Sig Sauer Academy located in New Hampshire. For more information about Sig Sauer and its complete line of products, visit sigsauer.com.
How did you get into wolf hunting?
How did I? Well, for revenge, really.
So what did a wolf ever do to you?
Yeah, well, they ruined my hunting spots, but more than that, it really started in my teens. I grew up I'll say we had the best of both worlds. I mean, we had elk, moose, muleys, whitetail, black bear. I mean, hunting here and getting general tags every single year, I literally felt like I lived. But even, one of those things where you don't really know how good you have it until you lose it. That's pretty much what I grew up as. And I didn't do sports in high school or anything like that. I was really addicted to hunting. So I put my whole energy into that. My dad is an obsessive hunter too. He's a big time elk hunter, owns his own logging job. So he took a lot of time off taking me out in the mountains. I mean, he was calling elk in front of me at a very early age before I was even of age to hunt. I just watched him pull back his bow on bull elk and shoot them and stuff. And, I was tracking blood trails with my dad before I was even of age to hunt, just following him and his hunting adventures. And I think our whole family just got hooked. You know what I mean? We all got hooked, and not just hunting, but shed hunting too. So we were doing all of it. And there was always something to hunt or something to shed hunt any time of the year. And I'm very obsessive with wildlife. I love wildlife, and I'd always just like being in the mountains and seeing wildlife. And I think where it really started was, I'd like to say it was 2006 was when the first time I truly understood the wolf, or not understood, but my experience being around wolves. Because before that, we never had that. We had mountain lions and bears and some coyotes, and we knew the importance of predator management. I was always taught that. But, I never really saw the impact when a mountain lion moved into a canyon. You know what I'm saying?
Like 2006 is pretty early in the story of wolf recovery in Montana, outside of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. The first wolf I ever saw in Montana, I think, was in it was in 2009, right when they opened the first season.
Oh yeah. And so, yeah, we had an area in our and it came from Montana side. So by the way, so it wasn't a Canadian wolf. It had to be a transplant Montana. And so there's this one mountain range that it hit quick, 2006, we had them. And even some of the wildlife biologists and stuff were still not 100% admitting that we had official packs in our area yet. But at that time, we got into our mule deer area. This is an area that we've killed big bucks in, and I've watched my brother take big bucks. And it's just one of those areas we always want to go to because we see a lot of animals, a lot of muleys. And we got up there one day and we were glassing, and there was just nothing, absolutely nothing. And we just thought, could have been, did we get up there late, or are the deer just bedded down? Is there a storm coming through? Why is nothing moving? And so we sat there and waited around, and my brother had this idea like, well, why don't we just, we're in our teens at that time. He's like, well, why don't I just shoot at that rock and see if I can get something to jump out of the timber, because we're just seeing all these little timber patches. And he
That's
just
a classic teenage boy hunting tactic right there. I like
that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't do that now. That's not the type of hunter I am. But as a kid, you do stupid crap like that.
Yeah, totally.
And so my brother shot across the canyon, and that's where the size of a wolf really hit me. A big black wolf just jumped out of the timber and just ran down the canyon. It was 400 yards away, and you could see everything of that dog. Like, that is one big dog just running right down the canyon. And we were just blown away. We had no clue what we just witnessed or what we just saw. But after 2006, there was a big wintering range too, not just the muleys, but the moose would go and winter. And we would count, I'm not even exaggerating when I'm saying this, or the time we were sitting on our snowmobiles and just counting moose in the winter. And we saw a little over a dozen bulls, not cows, bull moose wintering in there. When they all shed, we'd go in there, just clean house on paddles. We'd load the snowmobiles up and drive off. But that wolf pack went in there, and within it wasn't even a long period of time. This was within a 2-year period of time, and that area just got completely wiped out. And that's where it started. And then ever since then, it was just the same pattern where, that wasn't our only hunt spot. We had several others, but as soon as a wolf pack would move in, the wildlife moved out, and it just kept on going on and on and on. And finally, they did have that season that opened, but it got shut down shortly after. And so I really never got to hunt wolves until 2011 when it stayed open. Because it did get shut down, didn't it? Back then, it was like 2009.
I don't know, man, because they opened that season in Montana, and I thought, well, I'm not even going to waste my money on that, And I went out elk hunting with my buddy Adam, and he had a longbow. It was the last weekend of the archery season, and there were some grizzlies around. So I had a 45-70 with iron sights, and we're sitting on a ridge first thing in the morning. And I looked down in the bottom of this draw, and I didn't even want to say what I was seeing because I didn't want to be the guy that cried wolf when it was actually a coyote or something, Yeah. And, 5 of them came out. One was black and one was pure white. And I said, Adam, there's some wolves down below us. He's like, well, let's call them in. And so we got out our coyote calls and we squeaked at them and got these wolves to run into like 150 yards. And it was a crazy hunting experience. And we were kind of rattled by it, to be completely honest. When they committed, Adam with his longbow turned around and he quit calling, and he goes, don't let him get me.
Oh, no.
And we quit elk hunting for the day. We just went back to the wall tent and ate mini Snickers and kind of giggled about what a crazy experience it was. I went straight into the Marine Corps after that, so I don't really know what happened kind of with those lawsuits and everybody trying to shut down the wolf season. But in 2011, like you say, it did open for good in Idaho, and they've only increased hunter and trapper abilities to take more wolves as they've recognized, how big of a problem this is.
Yeah. And I'm glad that it's the laws and regulations, I feel like now are in the right hands. Before they were in the wrong hands, and it wasn't there were people that weren't even doing the studies. Felt like a lot of the laws and regulations were built based on feelings rather than the actual facts. But I think Idaho and Montana both did it right. And what I mean by that is I look at Wyoming, and they're just like, shoot them all after the first season was open. Well, then they lost their privileges quickly after. Idaho was just like, they start off with, all right, we'll start off with 2 wolves a year. If we see the population still increasing, we'll just slowly increase the limit. And so I felt like Idaho and Montana was right on that part, like they showed that we were, in some way being responsible. I'm not saying anything wrong with Wyoming. I freaking love Wyoming. And in some ways I love that mentality, but sometimes that mentality doesn't get things done, in that way. Like we had to kind of work with those environmental groups in some way to show like, look, we're responsible. We know what we're doing. We're taking care of the predator problem. We're still doing our studies. There's still wolves running here with collars on them. We're being responsible about the matter. And so I felt like that in that sense, it was working. But anyways, yeah, 2011, that was when I first harvested that was my first wolf I shot. I was like, enough.
Oh, you got one that first year.
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
And
tell me the story.
Yeah. So that first year, my sister came up from college at that time, and she's like, I want to fill my deer tag, for filling the freezer in college. And so she came back up, and I was just taking her out hunting. And the wolves, it was just the same wolf pack that I was hearing. I kept going out deer hunting for myself before she came up. There's this wolf pack just almost every day. You open the pickup door and you're walking past wolves howling. And this was my mistake. And a lot of other hunters make this mistake where they're so focused on the animal they're trying to pursue that they ignore the wolves. That was a mistake I used to make, where I'd hear wolves howling. I'm like, oh, I'm not wolf hunting today. I'm deer hunting. And, for me now, I'm like, okay, got to always be an opportunist, right, when it comes to wolves. But okay, I won't get off topic there. So we went in there and I borrowed a friend's predator call. Well, there was a howl. I had this howl recording, and I just went up there and howled and called the whole pack in. And so I shot one at 400 yards, and there was a really nice, it was painful. So there was a gray one and a black one running out in the cut, and the whole pack was held behind him. And my dad whistles, and the black one stops behind the tree and the gray one stops in the opening. And I was like, I wanted the black one, but it's like, whatever, it's a wolf. And so I shot the gray one and the black one ran off. And so I still ended up with a wolf that day. And then the following day we went back and we were trying to call in that wolf pack again. And this time my sister was in line. I'm like, you know what? Screw this deer hunt. Let's kill wolves. And so she was in line. We were calling in the wolves, and you're hearing them howling. They're coming closer and closer and closer. And then the Mac Daddy, the alpha male, howled way in the far back, his big howl, and the whole pack left and went back to him. It was almost like he remembered what happened the day before and just kind of, he was the one with the brains. Said, don't go back. Remember what happened yesterday. So anyways, that year was insane for wolves. I mean, we were driving and you could road hunt wolves back then. Like you could drive the roads and you're bumping wolves as you're driving. And that was the worst I've ever seen a wolf population ever be. I haven't seen it get that bad since then, but it's still bad and they still need managed. But everybody, I think during that time, nobody knew what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing as a hunter. Trappers didn't know what they were doing. So we all had to go through this very awkward learning curve and how to manage this predator that has been thrown in our lap. You know what I mean? Like we've seen the damage they're doing and we want to manage it, but we just felt like our hands are tied. It's not like a mountain lion where you can find the tracks and let the hounds on it. It wasn't like that. Wolves are it's a completely different animal you're hunting.
Well, and I'd like to point out a couple of things with that story that you just told. One, when people first started hunting them again in the lower 48, there were some easy opportunities. But two, they learned very, very quickly, and they remember. There's no animal that I've ever come across on any continent that is harder to hunt than a wolf. They are so smart. They've seen every trick out there, and it's incredibly difficult. And that's why I'm so excited to talk with you about it, because it seems like you've cracked the code. And I kind of want to get a glimpse into that and hear some more of these stories about about your evolution with wolf hunting and how you learned and the mistakes that you made along the way and then the victories as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was just a learning curve since then. There were several times, I think anyone who's experienced wolf hunting, there's those moments when you're trying to call in wolves and they just don't close in the distance. That first time, like you said, there was stupid wolves. There was a lot of them. What's happened? The stupid ones got killed off. Yeah. Now I know as soon as Oregon and Washington open their season up, it's going to be the same ordeal where that first year, there's going to be a lot of people killing wolves that first couple of years. Then after that, you got only the smart wolves and they still reproduce quickly. And the thing is with those alpha males and alpha females, they teach the pups,
Right.
There's wildlife biologists that do studies on wolves in Alaska, and those alpha male and alpha females will teach the pups how to avoid trap lines.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like they're like you said, they're one of the most intelligent animals in North America. I can't think of another animal even comparative to that. But yeah, you could say that with time and time again, a lot of it had to do with our numbers. So I had a lot of trial and error, but it came to a point to where I was finally able to not just call them in, but to actually, locate them, call them, and execute them and actually kill them, more than just one wolf. And to actually do that again and again, even on the same pack that's already wised up to my original calls, I have additional techniques that I've learned and how to continue pursuing the pack and taking down as many dogs as I can. And so, yeah, I got a lot of stories. I don't know which stories you want to hear, but I did also have one with my bow. I had an archery experience myself where I stuck 3 wolves with a bow.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Give me some details.
Yeah. So that was a crazy one where I was just elk hunting. And this was one of the areas I had a dandy bull that I saw the year before. And he had stickers, just like a big 7x7 bull elk that I really wanted to harvest. And it was one of those areas the wolves haven't hit hard yet. There was a couple wolf sightings, but they didn't really claim that as a territory yet. But I'd say this was the first year they decided to move in. And I was hunting that area, and the areas I normally see elk, they just weren't there. And I was cow calling, bugling, no answer, no response. And usually, I don't know if you do the same thing, but when you're walking through thick brush, do you let out cow calls to cover up your sound?
So here's the thing with that. And I get really particular about elk hunting, but elk tend to vocalize when they're in the open, and their cue to each other that there's danger in the area when they're in the open is that they'll quit calling. And you'll notice that if you roll up on a herd of elk that are out in a meadow or something, that they're very, very vocal. And when somebody sees you, even before a bark, they'll all quit. But when they're in tight timber, they don't do that. And the cue that there's danger and that they need to be alerted in tight timber is to start calling. So I used to do that to kind of cover up sound. I don't do it anymore. But that's just my take on elk.
Right. And I think every region is different just because our area is probably 98% timber. We don't have any.
Yeah, you live in a rainforest.
Yeah, I live in a rainforest. So all our calling is in the timber.
Yep.
And very few times do I even see an elk in an opening, at least in this time of the year. I'll see them pull in the wintering ranges or in the logging cuts. But yeah, so usually what I'll do, and like I said, every hunter has their own way of doing things and it works. So I was just setting a cow call just to cover my sound. I'm breaking branches, I'm busting through brush, but I had that feeling that something was staring at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that. Like my hair kind of stood up. I'm just like, what's going on? I felt like eyes were on me, and I looked to my left and I got this wolf just trotting in at me, and all I could do is just pull an arrow, get an arrow knocked and pull it back. No time. I had a GoPro in my pocket. I never keep a GoPro in my pocket anymore. Now I keep it on my head so I can just push record. But in this situation, like I said, this was a learning curve when it came to that. But anyways, I just pulled back my bow, and he was just a couple steps away, not that far. And I just let an arrow fly right under the chin, stuck him right here in the chest. He took a couple leaps, tipped over. The rest of the pack came out and was sniffing him out, trying to figure out what was going on. And I just knocked another arrow, pulled back, stuck a second one. And then the the wolves just jumped to the side and we're looking around, knocked another arrow, pulled back, stuck a third one. And that third one looked like a good shot. I just wasn't able to find that wolf just because it ran. Have you hunted in that red huckleberry brush?
I have.
And
Yep.
it rained that morning. So it was not just red brush, it was wet red brush. And it just ran in that red brush. And I just was looking in there and I was having a hard time finding blood. I spent about an hour and a half trying to find blood on that third one. But I wasn't able to find that one. But I saw the hit. I saw where the blood was pouring out. The wolf was acting very hit as well. He was stumbling, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I was like, that's a dead wolf. And so I thought I had 3. That one had to have died in there somewhere, but I did have 2 pretty much stacked on top of each other. But that was just one of those moments too, where like I wanted to shout in excitement and cry at the same time because I was filled with excitement and fear all at once. Because this is my first time actually really experiencing something like that. And all those shots, I mean, most of those shots were all under 10 yards.
Wow.
Like really close. I think that, well, the last one was probably more like 20. That last
That's
shot.
crazy, dude.
But he still ran past me. And so it's just, that was one of those weird moments too. And I had a lot of moments like that, but I can't tell you how many more moments I've had that since then. But I think I've called in wolves so many times close blank that I don't fear it anymore. I just expect it. And I think when you spend time with a certain animal like that, I think, you see those guys on Shark Week and they live around sharks and you're like, that guy's crazy. Well, I think that guy eventually knows, he spends enough time around sharks. I guess he knows the next reaction the shark's going to do if you do this or that. And I'm not saying I'm like that, but I'm saying that I've gotten so comfortable with wolves that I know when I'm in danger and when I'm not. When I'm calling in a wolf pack and they're coming running in at me, like I don't fear for my life like I used to.
But I'm sure you're very excited. Oh,
it's the adrenaline rush is nothing like you've ever had. Like when it comes to elk hunting, like I'm an elk hunting addict, a mule deer addict, whitetail, moose. I mean, anything. Like I love to hunt, but there is nothing out there like calling in a wolf pack. And like, I kid you not, like if it's like, I have lots of dreams of wolf hunting. Like it sticks to my head for a very long time. Probably the worst dreams I have are the ones I miss the wolves. I actually had a dream a couple of days ago, actually, where I was sitting there and I had a dream that I pulled my gun up and my scope fell off right before I was going to shoot. You have these dreams and you're like, I can't, you wake up in a deep sweat, like I can't let something like that happen to me. But
go tighten your bases, make sure everything's to spec.
Right. But, over time, I've learned in what I would consider as the perfect wolf gun too. And I consider my gun right now is the gun exactly. I built this gun specifically for wolves, but I still know that there's some things I can tweak to make it better. But the one thing that I changed, so I think if you were a first-time wolf hunter, you would think that the AR, having an automatic where you could just throw a bunch of lead, muzzle brake, that's going to be your gun, your wolf killer. And come to find out that isn't your wolf killer, in my opinion. Maybe there's guys that are out there that are really good shots with an automatic, but I feel like, my hunting rifle, I'm a really good shot at, and I'm more of a make every shot count. I don't like spreading lead and wounding a bunch of animals. And my thing is I'm more or less, I like to kill. No, I don't like to just kill the wolves. I like the rest of the pack not to know what I'm doing. I like to kill a wolf at a time. And as long as the rest of the pack hasn't wised up to me yet, then I can still call them in again.
Sure.
And you just have to get rid of the witnesses. You have to just consistently work on the pack like that. And, we've had it where I've called the same pack in, 3 times in 3 different days in the week. The same pack. And you can't do that using the same call.
Sure, of course not.
They wise up to those. But, like I said, I've over time and lots of trial and error. I mean, I feel like you said, we've come up with a really, really good formula that works that anytime I'm actually hearing wolves howling, like I'm very confident that I'm going to have a shot on a wolf that day. Like I'm like, okay, like a wolf is going to get a bullet today, either a bullet or he's going to get shot at, but something's happening today. Like I know how to call these things in. But there's more than just that I teach in the courses. I'm also teaching you how to find wolves, because that's actually the toughest thing, is finding the wolf pack.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, what we're talking about is a wolf hunting course that you created that people can sign into, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So kind of give me the foundation of what that is.
Yeah. So in this course, what you do is you would, let's say you're taking the course, you made the purchase, you're in the course, what to expect. What I'm doing is I'm teaching you everything, first of all, about the wolf. When I first got into wolf hunting, I couldn't find anything on the internet about wolves, like nothing. And some people overcomplicate the wolf pack. Like if you actually tried looking on those environmental sites and stuff, they're talking about alphas and omegas and all these, like they make the pack, the organization of the pack, really complicated. Just the way wolves act. And what I try to do is I try to simplify the wolf, teach you everything that you need to know about the wolf, why it does what it does. It's seasonal patterns from January all the way until December, for the entire year. And more or less, I teach it. Yeah, what I'm doing is, first of all, I just teach you everything about the wolf. And then from there, I'm teaching you month by month and how I like to hunt wolves and some hunting tactics that have worked for us. The other thing I'm also teaching is, well, we do, although it's a hunting course, my brother has had some really good trapping success. And again, same thing, he's dealt with the trial and error. It took an entire year and he didn't trap a single wolf. And then as soon as he trapped one wolf, then the rest came pretty easy for him. And so he goes through some of his techniques and how he likes to trap wolves. A small section of that, but I like to just give everybody, as much of information as I possibly can there.
So if people get into this course, do they have to buy a new subscription every year?
Yeah, so it's a full year course. So you get into it for an entire year, and these are all videos where I'm showing you how to do things. And like with me, I'm a visual learner. So if somebody's sitting in a classroom and just talking, I can kind of daze out at times, But the one thing I do in this course too is I'm actually showing you step by step and how to hunt wolves. And so I'm actually so you probably watched some of our Stuck N The Rut YouTube videos. When I create a YouTube video, I'm making it entertaining, right? So we may have a wolf hunt that I filmed for an entire hour. Like I probably have an hour's worth of footage from when we started wolf hunting to finish. And that could be an hour footage of a week's time. I break that hour and I make it into a 10-minute episode. And so when I break that into a 10-minute episode, there's a lot you're not seeing. I'm trying to make the video entertaining, but at this point, there's a lot of things that I'm doing, a lot of skills and tactics I'm not showing just because it's boring. So when you're doing this course, I'm not making this course entertaining. I'm not throwing fireworks and stuff. I'm actually teaching you step by step in how to hunt wolves. And what was really unique, so this year, so right before elk season started, I'm like, all right, I was already starting the wolf course. I was already putting it together. I was like, I'm going to do step by step in how to find a wolf pack and execute it. And I did that in 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went out on the mountain and I wasn't expecting it to be 2 days. Usually I expect it 4 days or possibly more. But I went on the mountain. I found wolf sign. I explained where I would expect these wolves to be this time of the year. And then the following morning, I found them. And then I showed how I even showed on the map and stuff and how I'm going to do the hunt. I'm like, this is what the wind's doing. This is what this doing. This is my plan. This is why. And then I went in and I killed 4 wolves that night and got it all on video solo. And that right now is the only way you can view that video itself is on the course. I'm only going to keep.
How much does the course cost?
It's $447.
$447.
Yes.
And that buys you a year of learning how to hunt and trap wolves.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to spend more than that the first time you go out and try.
You're going to spend over thousands. Plural. I've spent a lot of money hunting wolves. Even trapping wolves. These guys that are trapping wolves for footholds. I mean, you're talking about $500 or possibly more in just footholds. You know what I mean? With traps and lots of time, lots of money. You're going to be saving yourself in the long run.
And people flinch at that kind of cost on education all the time, but they don't flinch at all when that's the cost of a pack or, something like that. And they don't realize like your knowledge is more important than any piece of gear you could possibly bring with you. That
is true. Yeah. No, that's true. And that's kind of a new concept that people have to learn, unfortunately. And anyone that's actually wolf hunted has told me that course is worth it. Yeah, I actually have already put in the time. But those that are first get into it, it's like, oh, I don't know. But it's all right. And I want everybody to think about it. I don't want you to break the bank, but I know it's going to be worth it for you. If you really want to get a wolf, you want to invest time into hunting wolves, this is going to save you money in the long run. And it's just going to give you a foundation. I'm giving you a decade worth of information that we have learned wolf hunting, and I'm very successful in hunting wolves. I do it every year, and I'm taking down quite a few.
Tell me a little bit about the Foundation for Wildlife Management.
And so the Foundation for Wildlife Management was started just south of us, and it's a reimbursement program where if you are a member and you harvest a wolf, you get up between $500. I know right now they have it up to $2,500, so like $2,500 in certain units. There was some grant money, but that changes based on funds. But never there's a time where that money's under $500. It's always going to be over that.
So if somebody takes your course and then they go out and shoot a wolf and they're part of the Foundation for Wildlife Management, they just made money.
Yeah, they got paid for. Yeah. And on top of that, you got a fur that can be worth, I've sold fur for $500.
Sure.
And you got skull, and I got people always asking me, I didn't realize how valuable is a skull. Like I've actually used to throw away wolf skulls after I was done. And I would have bought that for $200. I'm like, what? I missed out on that opportunity, but usually it's, let's say about $100 per skull that, on average. Yeah. But that, you'll get it paid for, with a pelt, with the course.
And I'm not advocating for people to hunt so that they can make money off the animal. That's not part of the North American model. And it doesn't lead to good stuff in the long term. The reason that the Foundation for Wildlife Management is doing this is to reimburse people for the costs that they're incurring and going out and wolf hunting. And furthermore, the reason that they're doing it is because a lot of the ungulate populations in wolf country now are suffering really badly. So there's several biologists out there who I've talked to in the last year who have told me that moose have 10 years left in the state of Idaho, that in 1 decade, there will not be a moose left in the entire state. And that's a tragedy. And the primary reason, not the only reason, but the primary reason of that is wolves. Yeah. So if we don't get after it and really, really keep this population limited as much as possible and get it to the point that wildlife managers in the state want it to be at, which is less than it is now, then we're not going to have those native species like Shiras moose anymore. They're going to be gone. That's it.
Can I show you something real quick?
Totally.
I'm going to show you what shed hunting was like when I was a kid. So look around the room. You see all those sheds, all those moose sheds?
Holy cow. That's amazing. And folks can't see this right now, but this entire room is covered in moose paddles.
Look at these. Those are all Boone and Crockett bulls. So we have sold all the little ones. These are all Boone and Crockett. This actually right here is the world's largest Shiras moose shed right there.
Wow. That's amazing.
That is this has all been from home. We found all these next to home. We used to pick up, I remember getting out of high school, going up in the mountains And my brother and I would come off with more moose paddles than we can carry each on some days. You can't do that
That's
anymore.
crazy.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's lots of ways to value an animal, but the real value to an animal is the role that it plays in its niche in the ecosystem. And there's all kinds of extra cool things like finding a moose paddle. Like that's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to find a moose paddle. I've never done it. I found multiple bull moose deadheads, but I've never found a paddle, and I don't expect to. I'm not a lucky person. And honestly, at the rate that moose are going away, it's probably just going to be something that we tell grandkids about. When wolves first started really pushing into Idaho, we started getting a moose population here in Northeast Oregon. And at one time, we got around 70 moose living in a few different canyons here in this part of the state. And there had been moose here historically, like back in the day, and then some that traveled through periodically. But this was a new thing, and it was very exciting for a lot of people. However, for wildlife managers, it was not really cause for excitement, because I think that they knew more than anybody else that it was temporary. And unfortunately, those moose are almost completely gone now. And it happened so quickly that 99% of the population of Oregon doesn't know that we ever had a moose here. And, it's a real shame, because we've got the habitat. They used to be here. It would have been a wonderful thing to keep them. But the reason that they got here was wolf pressure. Those wolves came after them, and now the wolves have eaten almost all of them. And that sucks.
It does. But here's a little bit of hope, at least a little bit of hope. So there's 2 areas. They actually even shut this area down there used to be a moose shrine. They don't even have a moose shrine in there anymore. And so for a long time, because the wolves got so bad, they had to shut the area down. So this year I went in there, and I actually picked up probably close to 13, 14 paddles out of there. And it was like, to me, that was proof that predator management works. Because,
okay. So had there been a lot of wolf hunting going on in that area?
Oh, more than you can imagine. Some of the wolf trappers in there have they've already, if you were to give them a head count, I'd say there's 2 guys that trap that area pretty heavily. And between both of them, they got over 100 wolf heads. So that sounds like an unreal number, but that's the truth. So they've really, really knocked them down hard. And the reality is they didn't even know there was that many wolves here. You know
Sure.
what I mean? They only told us that there was 3, at least us, they try to tell us that there's only 3 packs living in our area. But then when you find out that there's over 50 wolves in our unit getting taken out every year, that kind of got them thinking, whoa, there's more than we thought. You know what I mean?
Well, and they're such a difficult animal to count under the best of conditions. And that's another problem that we're facing in Oregon right now, is they built a population estimate model around being able to visually observe every single animal. And that's all fine and dandy in Eastern Oregon, where you can catch them, out in the snow, outside of timber. You can track them if you've got a sunny day, out of a super cub or whatever, and you can lay eyes on a lot of them. But as wolves have expanded into Western Oregon, into Northern California, there's a tight timber canopy over all of the terrain. So now you can no longer count them from aircraft. Well, so what do? Hang game cameras, start taking fecal samples. It's a situation where you have to estimate the population with models, and we don't have enough experience or background to build good models around it. So it's a really, really difficult thing to count wolves accurately, because they're extremely difficult to hunt. And a portion of that count is hunting them in a way so that you can actually lay eyes on them or make your estimate somehow.
Yeah. And here's a good example too, like you brought up too. Well, the problem is their population expands so quickly, you can't keep count. And this area is an example where every wolf trapper in this area, they trapped out this pack completely, entirely. And so they felt like that pack was completely gone. I was even convinced there, because I was up there all winter long, and I did not see another wolf track there. They had their same routes, and you just stopped seeing tracks. And that particular mountain I'm talking about has a lot of roads, so it's pretty obvious if a wolf track crosses it. A lot of cat hunters are running in and stuff. So there's a wolf there, it would have been known. So everybody was convinced the wolves were gone, at least out of that particular area. Well, that's where I killed those 4 wolves this fall.
Wow.
And there was more wolves hounding back. All it took was a couple wolves to move in and have a litter of pups, and boom, you got another pack. Boom, that's how fast it is. And we have some really skilled, like I was telling you, we got some really skilled wolf trappers up here and hunters, myself and some other guys. And we're putting the knockdown on these wolves. And some of these areas we're convinced like, oh yeah, we got them under control. Then the next year, it's almost like, where in the heck did this pack come from? It's just this never ending. You have to always be on top of it. Even those areas I'm telling you are recovering, those wolf trappers, if they miss 1 year, it's just going to flip back to where it was because a new pack moves in. We're always getting these wolves from Washington. We're getting these ones with Washington Fish and Game collars that are coming through. We did have that. We had a little small portion of caribou left living in Idaho. And my brother trapped one of those wolves that was killing that last herd. And my friend did too. And the wildlife biologist said, well, I'm glad you guys did it because if it wasn't you, we had to go in and kill them because they were actually killing the caribou. That's how we knew. Well, then here's, long story short, caribou went extinct and got to television. And guess what? It was climate change. They named a lot of other things except of what we saw. There was a true wolf pack hunt, hitting that herd. And when we sat into the meetings with the wildlife biologist, they were telling us the predation problems they were facing. There was wolves, mountain lions. They said the calves only had a 12% chance of survival their first year. Well, if you only have 13 caribou left, you're going to have possibly 1 calf a year survive in that herd. That's doomed for extinction. But the news didn't cover
that's
that.
Another example of a wildlife population that's native that was very special. The only caribou living in the lower 48 still, there used to be a population in Maine, but this is all we had left. And it was a very special thing that people were generally unaware of. And then wolves roll in after they've been gone for a long time. And now we no longer have any caribou. Like that population is gone forever.
It is. And were they struggling? Yes. But when we're talking about struggling, they just flatline on that little number between 20. You know what I mean? They did vary, some years good, some years bad. But then when the wolves moved in, it was the same thing. 2 years, boom, they were gone. It was just like my whole life, I always knew about the 20, the group of 20 caribou that lived in our mountain range here. And it's just like, and some years it was 15, some years it was 30. It just kind of, bounced back and forth. But like I said, Wolfpack moved in, vanished, they're gone. And then they tried to move in, and at least I think there was one left up there with a collar, and they grabbed it and moved it to a Canadian herd up north. But the Canadians up there, they actually do some aerial shooting, and they said that their caribou herd actually increased 40% in that area because they were managing the wolf numbers. And the same thing, like you can be sad about all those wolves they're aerial shooting, but they reproduce so fast they come back. And so it's just really, if people think they're going to go extinct, that's not what's going to happen.
No, not even close. So they're reproducing at a rate of around 30% per year. And we've seen them do this in several different ecosystems, everywhere from the canyons of the Frank Church Wilderness to the Yellowstone to, the area that you live in that receives 2 billion inches of rain and snow every year. So 30% per year means that, that population is doubling every 3 years. It's crazy. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting double the wolves in that area, because it can only sustain so many. And the packs have a social tolerance that makes, younger males and some females get kicked out. So that population expands. And that's why, within a short period of time, we went from the 9 Mile wolves in northern Montana and the Yellowstone wolves and the Frank Church wolves to wolves going all the way to southern Colorado, northern California, and everywhere in between. Like it's a population that is going to explode and expand and continue moving and continue adapting to all these different environments. And wherever they go, there's damage that occurs because these animals are not used to wolf predation anymore because we haven't had them around for over a century.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is too, if you actually go in certain areas like Alaska and Canada, I spent a lot of time in Alaska just because I have my brother-in-law and sister. You'll notice there's a lot of areas that I would call, I don't know if this is the right term for it, but I call them dead zones, where there's actually just thousands of acres of just nothing, no wildlife, no nothing's using it. And I've seen this happen with the wolf here too. And I think eventually, if you were to say, what if, people just stand back and let nature do its thing? And, honestly, just talking to certain other, talking to some Canadians and stuff too, because I haven't lived long enough to see a full downward, up and down when it comes to wolves wiping everything out. They have to starve, and then the numbers come back, or they have to leave because there's no food source.
Well, that's not going to happen here today because we have livestock. So once they run out of, elk and moose and deer, they just move to livestock. And then you have all that turmoil and conflict that occurs with cattle and sheep producers. And as they get a tolerance to be around people, then you get even more issues where, now these wolves are following you back to your truck or killing your baby border collie puppy off your porch. These are things that are happening increasingly as those wolves get a tolerance because they're primarily preying on livestock as they deplete the wild prey population.
Exactly. And that's the same, we deal this with the grizzly too, because you can't manage the grizzly here. So it's the same thing we deal with here too. Like, right. Same thing we were discussing when they lose their food source, typically in nature, they starve. But yeah, like you said, we got the livestock. So that's the next resort. Their last resort is them starving. When they get desperate, they don't just go into livestock, they get dangerous. Mountain lions are the same way. They get dangerous when they're low on food source. That's when, that's when you get a lot of attacks from people. Mountain lions are killing people. I mean, that's the same thing with wolves. That's the same thing with bears. You have to manage it. You have to manage predator populations and keep things in balance.
And it's not your dog. Like it's not mythical. It's an animal. It's a predator. It kills stuff to make a living. It's super good at it. It's ruthless. You cannot anthropomorphize this animal. It's a wolf. And people, they just have had bad information, and it's the only information that they have. And I think that's why there's such an emotional response to it. And I just encourage people to open their mind a little bit. And for those folks who are opposed to wolf hunting who are still hanging in on this podcast, which I don't think there's probably very many of, and just do a little bit of research and try to find information that doesn't necessarily support your own opinion. And I encourage people to do that with anything that's controversial. Like, try and find the thing that doesn't support your opinion and then see if that is correct information or not. And that's how we learn. Like, that's how we strengthen our positions and strengthen our own minds.
Exactly. No, and that's true. There's even hunters out there that disagree with the management of wolves. To me, when an environmentalist gets on and tries to, gets on and death threats, whatever, I can't argue with them. They are in their own little world. I'll never see them. But it's what really gets to me is when I actually have a hunter who hunts elk, who hunts deer, but he's never experienced a wolf problem.
Yep.
And so he's saying, because he hasn't experienced a wolf problem, that I'm just making up excuses because I'm not killing animals anymore. The thing is, I'm filling my elk and mule deer tag every year still. That I just have to go back farther. I have to put in more miles. To me, it's sad that I can't take my wife and children up in the mountains and show them the wildlife that I saw when I was a kid. That's what I'm sad about. Like, I like to see balance in wildlife. I like to see nature be nature and do what it's supposed to do.
Yep.
I don't like packing in the backcountry 15, 20 miles and not seeing an elk and not even seeing an elk track. And the wallows getting grown up with cattails and nothing's using them anymore. Yeah, all the trails are growing up with green grass. But I'm like, there's no trails in the backcountry anymore that they use. Nothing's living back there. It's a dead zone. So, I mean, and that's unfortunate because I'm the only hunter back there. Nobody's been hunting back there. So anyways, sorry. So every time I get my soapbox, you just have to tone me down a bit because
I feel the same way. And it's a really similar situation here. We just can't hunt wolves yet. And eventually we'll be able to. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, then we need to learn how to do it effectively. Yeah. But I think the bottom line with all this is that wolf hunting is super exciting. It's a lot of fun. It's incredibly challenging. You're not going to hurt the wolf population. You are going to, if you're effective, help the native ungulate population. So the drawbacks to it is that you're going to take some heat from some people who don't understand, but you'll also have the information now to be able to talk with them about it if they're willing to change their opinion in light of new evidence.
Mm-hmm. And like I was saying too, there's proof that it works. You know, I've seen it in areas. I was telling you about moose, mule deer areas, some old mule deer, some of my old stomping grounds that I have said that, disappeared. Well, I mean, they're coming back. I killed I killed my biggest bull this year. And it was in that area I was telling you about. I saw that first wolf in 2006. And like I said, I have avoided that area for several years since then because the wolves wiped it out. But with the management, numbers are coming back, not the same as they used to be, but better than before. And, and taking down that bull elk I did this year was proof of it, that, hey, things are working. Predator management's working. I'm seeing animals in areas that's been dead for a pretty long time. And in a sense, with all the guys that are involved, I feel like every wolf pack, at least in our area, is counted for. Like we're pretty aware of our wolves and which ones we have, what's their routes. And for me too, just being the wolf hunter I am, I'm pretty aware of what wolf pack to go after next. Like if I had the time to go tomorrow, there's a wolf pack in the back of my mind. I know where there's one right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Generally that I can go after. And so that knowledge is here now and we're doing good, but there's a lot of areas in the wilderness areas like the Selway, the Bitterroot Wilderness, Lolo, Selway, I already said Selway, and even that salmon area, Frank Church Wilderness. There's these areas that trappers can't get to because it's just out of their way, to pack all that trapping gear is very difficult, but to hunt wolves, you can go as far back as you want to. Yeah. And these areas really need hunters. There's actually a lot of areas in Montana too. There's a lot of trapping rules still in Montana to where it makes it very difficult for a Montana trapper to be effective in managing wolves. But the laws on hunting wolves are really good. You can be effective in wolf hunting in Montana right now. And so areas like Montana are also really needed for wolf hunters. And like you said, it's fun. Like I actually originally started it just because I had to, but after I've had several experiences wolf hunting, it is addicting. Like after you call in your first wolf pack, you might end up skipping elk season. I'm serious. Like I did.
I believe it. Yeah. No, it's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. And learning about it on the forefront is going to save you a lot of pain and money spent in the wrong direction on the back end. So I encourage people to look into your course. And I look forward to taking it myself.
Thank you very much. Yes, I appreciate it. And yeah, we're all in it together. We're all trying to manage this predator and we all want the experience of hunting deer and elk. I think all of us getting in and just joining up, and that's what the foundation too is about as well. Just getting everybody involved and getting reimbursed. And
so I'll have links in this podcast description to the Master Wolf Hunting class, to the Foundation for Wildlife Management. I encourage you guys to enroll in that, even if you don't live in Idaho or Montana. It's not a lot of money to get involved, and it does really support this wildlife population. If you ever plan on coming out and enjoying this wildlife, or you just like knowing that it's there, this is real money that actually helps keep these animals around. So encourage you to look into all of that and to follow Stuck in the Rut, because it's really good content. It's fun to watch.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. And yeah, if you ever get down in my neck of the woods, definitely look me up, and I'm up there in yours quite often too. So we'll have to get together and have a beer and talk wolves a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me know anytime.
All right. Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks.
October, November, December, they're just the best months out of the year, right? Whether it's for work or hunting or fishing, the holidays, spending time with your family, just it's awesome, right? And we've got some nice cold mornings now, and you get to go out and have a warm drink in the duck blind or out on the hillside where you're glassing for mule deer or elk, or sitting in a tree stand waiting for a whitetail to come past. Or you're working on the job site and you get to take a break and have some nice warm coffee waiting for you. It's pretty nice. Having a cold drink at the end of the day, that makes everything a little bit better too. My favorite Stanley item right now is the 14-ounce titanium travel mug. It's super lightweight because it's made out of titanium, so I'm willing to take it with me when I'm hunting, throw it in my pack. Fits in every cup holder out there, and it just seems to be the right amount of coffee. I like it. It's a really cool item, and it fits a niche that I didn't have filled in like any of my other drinkware categories, I guess. If you're looking for a Christmas present for somebody or just a gift that you want to help them out with, I recommend this because it's pretty cool and it's something that they don't have already. The way most discount codes work, completely honest, is if you use it, then whoever gave you that code gets a kickback. Now, I'm not a salesman, and I want nothing to do with that. So I'm going to pass along to you a discount code that Stanley gave me because they're great supporters of this podcast and they're great supporters of this audience, which I love. So if you use the discount code 6RANCH, the number 6, the word ranch, you'll get 25% off anything you order from Stanley1913.com. I get nothing back from that. I don't want anything. I just want to pass along some savings to you and save you a little bit of money and get you connected with this great company that makes really great products. And as we move through fall and get into winter and the holidays, just hope everybody's doing well and having a good time, and that you get to get out there and connect with nature and connect with your friends and family and have a nice warm drink while you're doing it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share the show with a friend. You can also rate the podcast and leave a review. Your support allows me to keep doing what I love, which is meeting incredible folks and sharing their stories with you. For more content and photos, follow the show on Instagram at 6Ranch Podcast or me at 6Ranch Outfitters. This episode was produced by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the 6Ranch Podcast was created by John Chatelain and digitized by Celia Christofferson. Tune in every Monday for a brand new episode of the 6Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.